Hello everyone, my name is Justin Cook. I am the Global CTO of the AWS Alliance at Atos. Today we're going to be discussing the AWS Partner Equipped. This is the new features that came out from the Database Migration and Modernization portfolio from AWS. Okay, to begin, obviously a lot of acronyms. That's just how the database world is right now at AWS. We're going to start with D2M. This means Database Migration and Modernization Programs. Next will be DMS, which everyone probably knows, the Database Migration Service. This is a tool we all use quite a bit, but it has new features. The DMA, this is your Database Migration Accelerator, and also the AWS partners with that. And then a new R, out of the 7 R's, right, in our migration strategies, which is restructure, and modernization modules for large-scale migrations, and then a call to actions and some QA. Working back methodology. So determining data capabilities working backwards is something people tend to do, right? Start with the outcome-based kind of lens, your business initiatives, and work backwards to determine the data capabilities. And then from there, you can kind of structure out and build out a rock-solid data foundation. Data is your differentiator. Let me move my face. You can reimagine your data, embrace changes with the mechanism. So modern data foundations with generative AI are really critical. A lot of people throw themselves into agentic AI or to Gen AI without knowing and orchestrating their data ecosystem end to end. That's really critical, right? It's the foundation of a house you have to build before building out the rest of the house and the walls and everything else. The foundation is critical. So the data is your differentiator. Okay. Talking about data migrations and modernizations. Start with the first one. So D2M programs, the programs, tools, and experience to accelerate your journey. Optimization and licensing for databases is one clients want to talk about. So navigating complex database licensing scenarios, prescribing the best migration path for the database services overall, and the global support for the AWS partners is also critical. Workloads is another one people talk about a lot for Oracle. So knowing your database, knowing your applications that are Oracle branded, encompassing all those migration patterns for AWS across all the 7 or 8 R's, and including best practices for maximizing the overall benefits of AWS. Exadata, obviously migrating and modernizing your Exadata workloads is a big topic of conversation as well right now, just due to the cost, and driving that innovation and reducing that TCO is critical. You're evaluating workloads, you can benefit, migrate over those workloads, and manage those databases with this D2M program. Database freedom, so you can break free from the commercial database engines to work on AWS cloud native and open source options. This allows you to really prioritize the best workloads based on effort. Evaluating the modernization options in the multiple databases is critical, right? So the kind of topology in the layer in there is the directional business use case. You've got your executive briefing topics. You've got your DMB assessment, which is going to be your database mod X, as we call it a lot. So your modernization experience-based acceleration. And then you're supporting your MAP 2.0 for your database and your acceleration below that, in addition to MAP Lite. So those funding programs are available for this specific program. Okay, D2M programs, you've got your EBC content, which is good data, good AI. These are strategies for modern data foundations that empower generative AI. You're building a business case, right? So this could be modern foundations of data overall, and you're learning from Amazon, right? So the journeys around the databases are critical as well. You've got your database mod X part, which is your EBA as well. This is kind of your journey, or your holistic database mod journey. Then you've got your migration tooling as well. DMS SC, this is really dedicated to having minimal downtime and orchestrating the migrations of your homogeneous and heterogeneous workloads. Okay, so database mod X, the approach to implementing pathways. This is what we talked about a little bit earlier, that EBA. You've got your qualification, which is your program eligibility standpoint. You move into your assess, plan, architect phase, which a lot of us know about from different things like MAP programs in the past. You've got your executive alignment. You're establishing your Cloud Center of Excellence now. You've got your mod assessment workshop as well. And then you've got your target architectures, your roadmaps, your pathways, and your MVPs that are carved out then as well. Next stage is your building and proving. This is your 5 to 7 week kind of period where you're looking at your enabling your CCOE. You're working on best practices for cloud adoption framework, cloud native builds. You're planning your EBA overall, and you probably normally have a lot of EBA workshops or 3-day parties to actually deploy and work on this in sprint methodology. Scale is the last one. This is the ongoing mod for the engagement. You're growing, you're applying learning to a broader portfolio, maybe across different levels of your organization. You're off-ramping to other programs as well, and you're delivering this to the customer, the pro server, wherever it's going to. Okay, DMS, the database migration service, as we all know, this is the assess, convert, mobilize, and migrate and modernize phases. This is the idea of moving to AWS or moving across AWS. A lot of times we talk about the schema conversion tool. This is obviously moved to your AWS DMS conversion, schema conversion tool. This is kind of just changing the nomenclature and moving around where it is. Your DMS console and your CLI are a critical part of this move. Know what those are. Your DNS fleet advisors for larger fleets as well for moving advices on how to best do that with the multiple layers on larger databases as well. And then you've got your serverless and your endpoints. Okay, so knowing what the SCT, which is the Service Desk tool, and the DMS Managed Services tool are, they're a little bit different. So here are the architectures around the difference. You've got your source database for your schema conversion tool. It goes into your discovery and assess, which is your fleet advisor for looking at inventories, assessing items like that. This is where you can also do your convert. So you're using your SC tool to convert the source schema and code to match the target database, which is important. Then you have your migrate, which is actually taking creating the tasks around your source, and then you look at your target as well, and you initiate that migration with the click of a button, and then you have your target database, right? A little bit different with the DMS schema conversion, which is where you have the same kind of workflow. Your source database, your assess and discovery phase goes directly into the convert phase, which is going to be where you have your schema for converting the source to match your target database. Then you have your migrate after that, and then you have your target database. So just the kind of topology and workflows slightly a little bit different. Okay, so talking about database migration service, your DMS schema conversions are now all powered by GenAI, which is an important tool and important to talk to your clients about as well. This is supported for things like SQL Server, Oracle, goes to things pointing towards things like Aurora PostgreSQL, RDS for PostgreSQL as well. Benefits are things like simplified migration process, accelerated conversions is probably the number one reason to use it as of now. Enhancing things like your stored procedures, your SPs, your function, your triggers that are in your database that helps kind of move those over a lot quicker and easier. And it also lets you automate like 90% of the schema conversion using that AI. So there's a QR right there for how to hit it. It's a really great tool. I highly recommend it. DMA and your AWS partners. This is important just to note. We'll go over this really quickly. But the modernization using your GenAI workshops is critical. These are kind of high-level topics that we would cover overall that AWS will partner with us to do. So the idea is this is kind of the proposed agenda for what you should do. These are the key topics you should hit to have that kind of modernization. You can talk about this with the clients, something you can build out as part of a sales track, and then it can work on that hands-on workshop to grow that experience in the modernization overall. Okay, moving on to the next slide, we're going to talk about ISV tooling. So knowing where the ISV or independent software vendors can help is critical. So that could be planning your OLI certified. OLI is the beginning stage of really evaluating and looking at your workloads. You've got your comprehensive assessments, agentic migration planning, as well as your modernization pathway. So that's all under the lens of planning out and orchestrating the what's going to be the future build. Slow migration helps with this a lot. ISVs move slower, right? It makes those workloads migrate faster. It modernizes them and creates that automatic landing zones and migration platforms, which a lot of shops do want. Functionality list, we have these here: extended database engine support, agentic AI powered. Those pre-built agents are growing more and more in the marketplace by the day right now. Testing the reconciliation is critical as well as the building on the DMS SC. And extending things like AWS Transform, which is a major lens now for the mainframe and the VMware migrations as well. Okay, moving on to the next slide, we're going to talk about database migration tools for AWS Marketplace. So as you can notice on here from seeing what these 10 top ones are, one of those is RIP, or they were before they're divested. So, we still are going to leverage them. The migration on-ramp for Cloudimize is a critical part of what we do. But we also have the ability to kind of leverage and use other tools as well. There's other ones that are in use like Flexera and Device42 that are out there. But just keep in mind that a lot of these can be done natively through the AWS suite. And we can also enable and leverage some of our professional services in-house across the geos, across the BLs, to help build out this specific suite of migration tools to create a database ecosystem migration to AWS. Okay, the migration tools as well, we see them here in another kind of breakdown for where they are from a standard of database migration tools versus AI-powered database migration tools. Obviously, we will see the ones on the left grow more and more as time goes on. Understanding migration and modernization tools by AWS and the partner. Sorry, I cut off at the top. But ultimately what it is that we want to know that it goes from the assess, mobilize, and migrate and modernize phases. This is really what we want to think about from a topology of how we see the overall transformation roadmap, right? So we've got the inventory pillar, which is going to be your things like your AWS migration evaluator, your application discovery service, your database current state investigation. Then you move over into like the business case, right? So where are we looking at this from like a migration portfolio assessment lens? How do we see the cloud economics and the FinOps around the spend currently and where it's going? How do we look at the migration ready assessment? Is the organization ready? Is there a lot of application dependency across the database ecosystem as well? And then the directional business use case is also important. Mobilizing is another one of the phases that takes a little bit of time. We want to make sure that you do it. So when you start the migrate and modernize phases, you're prepared. This could be deep discovery and planning around the migration portfolio assessment, migration hub strategy recommendations, items like that, flows in your app dependency, as well as your application discovery service and a migration hub. So you're ultimately moving towards the migration and modernization database or data migration and modernization what kind of workflow. That could be things like we just talked about the SCT tool, leveraging DMS, data sync, Snowball, the migration hub orchestrator as well. And then ultimately you're moving towards modernization at points as well, which is going to be things like your transform, your DMS, SCT, as well as your migration hub refactor spaces. The new R, restructure. So we're talking about the 3 R's, 7 R's, right? So the 7R migration strategies, you're refactoring, you're replatforming, repurposing, rehosting, relocating, retiring. So looking at restructuring obviously is a key part of this kind of workflow. When you're talking about how we're going to rebuild part of that DMS workflow, it obviously will go into the validation and the transition to production as well, and it adds on to the additional kind of overall topology offering that we have for modernization and migration. This is kind of breaking down the specific pillars around, if you notice, cost savings, operation, resiliency, sustainability. Some of these are the well-architected frameworks pillars as well, but just kind of noting that these are also under the R's for rehost, reallocate, replatform, refactor, and re-architect. This is kind of a matrix you can share with clients that will break down things that are really critical. Obviously, we see a lot of operational resilience in some of our SALs, as well as cost savings as being critical points that you want to leverage for building out database SALs. The 8th R in migration status, so restructuring, this is what it is. Let me move my head so you can see a little bit better. Ultimately, this is going to be refactoring, restructuring. So when we're looking at how we have a relational database or our RDBMS, storage object and code objects have that app that goes into it, you can leverage and look at how you're putting those in storage object or in code objects, and those have the app as well. So that kind of changes a little bit of this restructure around how you're building the refactoring at the end, and it's technically still a modernization technique. Speaking of modernization, modularization, so talking about migration, modernization, and decision factors, you really want to consider the fact that you have one spectrum, which is your time and complexity, and another spectrum of that, which is going to be your value and cost savings. If you look at this on like an XY axis here, you can see that there is a difference in the modality of how you shift over time. As you grow more towards time and complexity, you might have things like migration for lift and shift, which could be on different end of the spectrum from migrating, which is moving to managed, or your modernize, which is your refactor as well. These are the kind of features that you want to look at for those 3 different pillars. One of them that's really critical, obviously, that you would want to think about is breaking away from legacy platforms on modernize is important, as well as one we see quite a bit for lift and shift is moving away from vendor locked in as well. How does this approach lead us down a path? So kind of knowing that single thread approach for an entire stack of workloads is critical, right? So application layer, database layer, and storage layer, the inefficient target architectures with potential non-optimal target services is what we want to avoid as well. So knowing the kind of the database and file system layers on EC2 instead of leveraging things like RDS or Aurora are important for your clients to know as they're growing or they're modernizing their ecosystems on AWS. Lower value returns, higher overheads, obviously something we want to avoid, and missing the follow-up actions for future phases is really important as well, because you can grow those at separate SAOs and grow that business and grow that pipeline to help kind of increase the total cost, the total value, as well as increasing that future state growth for your client overall. Okay, moving on. I'm breaking down the single workload. We already talked about this. The database modernization modulations is really important as well. So this is kind of the topology of you have your DMM levels on the left-hand side, moving to AWS, moving to commercial DBs, moving to Aurora to Babelfish, items like this. It will let you know what the migration strategy is, what the target services are as well, in addition to having those immediate benefits and rolled up benefits as well, in addition to the other levels. So these kind of matrix help you identify how exactly you look at your modernization modulation overall, and then how you actually can grow that and understand where your client fits into this matrix is important. Okay, moving on, we're going to go to the next slide. It's breaking down each workload. So this is the same thing we just talked about above, understanding exactly where they fit into that topology from that modernization modulation, and understand the phases with those is also critical to get to your ultimate goal, which is your end game for your database modernization and any kind of movement for your database. Next slide is going to be on the allocated team. So you have your team structure for your kind of tiering. This is kind of tends to be standard across the industry, but it might be individual for your clients. Knowing that specific your phase strategies around that, what exactly you're looking to do, your assessment tool and how you're planning on leveraging that, as well as your execution teams and tools. Now in Atos, this could be internal for how we build out our specific staffing models, but we can also leverage the AWS ProServe as like things like Partner Connect as well to bring them in to help out. Something we talked about earlier, how do you build out that 8th R in the migration strategy, and where does it kind of build out and how's that understood? Okay, moving on, we're also going to talk about let's talk call to actions. So what comes next, right? So how do we look at the future? We're going to look at exploring the database schema conversions with your Gen AI workloads. We really want to start looking more into DMP programs, right? How do we get to those executive briefings? How do we look on things like Good Data, GXP? How do we look at like modern data foundations? Learning from Amazon as well is important, right? Their directional business use cases is important as well as part of that suite, as well as the DB optimization and learning assessments. We want to form that migration modalities kind of plans for the customers, and we can request those DMA technical workshops as well. That's it. So if you want to contact me for building out these kind of workplaces, these workflows, these journeys, anything that the client needs, you can contact me at justin@atos.net with questions. Thank you for taking the time. Nice to talk to you, Atos experts.